Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Chris Tarr is here, and he had quite the adventure in La Crosse, Wisconsin, with 2 different transmitter sites. Lots of things wrong. What does he need to fix first? It's actually a really good story of how to troubleshoot and what he found wrong and what he won't let happen again. Coming up next on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack, and I can see right now I wasn't prepared. So let me bring someone in who is prepared, and that's Chris Tarr. Hey, Chris, good to see you, man.
Always be prepared. That is my motto.
Well, tell you what, I'll show people what I wasn't prepared. I forgot to turn on the TWiRT sign. Isn't that terrible? But look, I've got a remote control here.
Oh, of course you do.
Charles Sather made this thing for me. If I get a 2-shot, it'll knock it out. But boo, there we go. There's the TWiRT sign. All right, nice. Now we're ready to start the show, ladies and gentlemen.
Now it's official.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's a wonderful day. We've had some rain this week. Other than that, it's temperature's been about 10 degrees cooler than the last couple of weeks, so it's much more pleasant here. But Chris, you're not in Mukwonago. You are on the road. Tell me about where you are.
I am in beautiful La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is right on the Mississippi River, right across from Minnesota. And I'm actually in a hotel room right now. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is why I'm here. And it's actually kind of an interesting story. And there's a lot of things that we had to work on, and a lot of things that some lessons learned as well. So I can't wait to get into the story. And it was actually a beautiful day today. Especially was out working in the field, so it was out on the bluffs along the river there at a tower site. The weather was just perfect. It probably low 70s, low humidity. It was just awesome.
Well, we'll get into a couple of commercial messages in a minute, but tell me about La Crosse. I've heard of this town for years, don't know nothing about it. I keep thinking it's famous for something, but then I keep thinking of like Wausau, which is famous for that insurance company that was on 60 Minutes all the time.
Sure,
what's La Crosse famous for? I
think at one point beer, maybe. Of course, it's Wisconsin. Everybody's famous. Everybody's famous for beer. I don't know what it's famous for.
Huh. Okay.
And I spend I literally spend a lot of time here. It's almost my second home. But, I want to say it was like there was some beer in the 70s, especially, that was popular. That was. Yeah,
it seems like I used to hear a commercial that was tagged La Crosse, Wisconsin. So-and-so Brewing Company, right. La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, La Crosse is beautiful, beautiful city along the Mississippi. It's real interesting. It's kind of surrounded by bluffs, which makes radio interesting with multipath and antenna designs and things like that. So we have 2 full power FMs and 2 translators fed from an HD. Of course, again, being on the bluffs, these translators are fill-ins with HD 2 and 3 formats on them, but basically have city grade coverage over the metro. So, we have four FMs and an AM here. And these are stations. I know I've showed the pictures a few times. We bought these stations shortly after they got out of bankruptcy. And we've done a lot of work, a lot of improvements, built a beautiful new facility. So I really do enjoy coming up here. I've been out on the river a couple times on a riverboat. And we're across from La Crescent, Minnesota, which is the apple capital of Minnesota. Bet you didn't know that.
Oh, so you're right on the state line to Minnesota.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's You go across the river and you're in Minnesota. And most of my FMs are on the Minnesota side.
So you're all the way across the state from your home in Mukwonago on the east side.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm about 3 hours away.
Okay.
3 hours.
Okay.
And we actually just bought a radio station in Eau Claire, which is another hour north of here. So.
So the Mississippi River goes, and that's the state line. That's the Mississippi River, generally speaking, the state line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's starting to make sense. But you got bluffs there, and there's other places along the Mississippi where it has cut bluffs. Now, are the bluffs only along the Mississippi, or are they away from the Mississippi as well? Maybe where the Mississippi used to run through.
Oh yeah. If you, especially on the Minnesota side, you go. There's another good radio site in Nodine, Minnesota, where a lot of the towers are. That's a little farther back, but this whole area, it's called the driftless area, and it's because the glaciers didn't cut through here back when they cut through the rest of the state and created the flatland. So even away from the Mississippi, there's lots of hills and valleys and that sort of thing. So really is. It's a beautiful area out here.
Yeah, I used to live in Memphis and still go back through there. I've got a radio station there. It's got a good Omnia product they're using as their STL, that Omnia MPX node. And it's working great for them. But when I lived in Memphis, well, I still call it this, Memphis, the city built on a bluff and operated on the same principle. Oh, sorry, Memphis.
Love it.
You kind of know it. You kind of know it's true. Hey, Chris, I want to mention Ray Topp at Radio Guide. Radio Guide is this wonderful every 2-month magazine about engineering, and I mean this is an engineer's magazine right here, by golly. The reason that I like Radio Guide is because the articles are long. They're longer than you'll find elsewhere. They got lots of room to publish more lengthy articles about engineering, and you'll find helpful ads. Of course, that helps pay for the magazine, but there's an FCC focused. There's an article from the chief engineer perspective from Scott Schmeling. Steve Tuzanu oftentimes writes articles in here. Lots of good stuff. Almost 2 months worth of reading in here. So you ought to check out Radio Guide. You can check it out online at radio-guide.com. Radio-guide.com. And Chris, also I need to mention our other sponsor here at the beginning of the show, and that is Nautel. Let's see if I can possibly bring the Nautel. Yeah, there we go. There's the Nautel homepage at nautel.com. This month, Chris, they're not doing, in the month of August, they're taking a break in the summertime here from their Transmission Talk Tuesdays. That's primarily so that Jeff Welton can get on the road, visit a few people, and go to a few shows. But the folks at Nautel want me to make sure you know about all their resources that are online. They have webinars, plenty of those. They have the Transmission Talk Tuesdays that are online. You can go back and watch those under videos and other places. They have plenty of white papers if you really want to jump into a topic, spec sheets on their products, customer stories. This is interesting. Look, it's not a waste of time to find out how other people have solved their problems one way or another. And of course, it's going to be using Nautel products, but the solution isn't always just obvious. Oh, there's your solution. Buy a transmitter. Well, it's not. It's not always. You ought to check out the customer stories and their ebooks, which are in-depth discussions on radio technology, research, and challenges. And Chris, you were telling me about another portion of the Nautel website. I've signed into it years ago, but tell me what you really like about the Nautel website.
So they've got this thing called the Nautel Users Group, or NUG, and they've got some really great tools in there, and it's free to register, so it doesn't cost anything. And one of the tools I use a whole lot is they have kind of a signal mapper program that creates Longley Rice type maps. And, you can enter in all the parameters and it saves all that information too. So, when I go back in and I can select sites that I've already created, and it's a great, obviously it's not something you would submit to the FCC or something real, technical, but it's a great kind of I like to do kind of the, what if scenarios and play around with it a little bit. And it's good enough to just give you a baseline to work with. So I really love that portion of their site. I'm so happy that they have it because I use it all the time for, okay, what if I move an antenna here? What is the signal going to look like? Or, move it up or down. And again, it's, it's a really handy tool to have around.
Good deal. That's the Nautel users group here on the site. You can sign up, log in. There's no cost to do that. They just want to know who you are before you start using all kinds of stuff from them. They're going to be at IBC September 9th through 12th, 2022. So check them out at IBC. Thanks a lot to Nautel for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And we appreciate their sponsorship, as well as Ray Top over at radio-guide.com. All right. They'll be back with webinars, I believe, in September, as soon as Jeff gets off the road. And we have we're back to a kind of a normal schedule without so many trade shows going on. Chris, all right, you've got a topic for us that is really interesting. You've got some tales to tell, and not only are they tales, that they're all true. They're all true.
Yes, mostly.
Oh.
I won't tell you which ones are not true. You have to figure that out on your own.
Yeah, set this up for us. What's going on?
Yeah, let me set the scene first.
Okay.
Here in La Crosse, we have, as I mentioned, we had these two translators that feed the programming of an HD2 and a 3 of one of our big FMs here in town. So in order to make all of this work, when we got the stations, what it ended up doing is I moved from an RF STL system to entirely IP. So I've got an IP radio from the studio to the transmitter site, and then the translators are actually on another tower about a mile away. So I have another IP radio that goes from the main transmitter site to where the translators are. So there's actually one IP hop from the studio to the transmitter, another IP hop from the transmitter to the translators. And I use IP codecs to feed all of that. So a week ago, all of a sudden I get all these alarms that, things are unreachable, my UPS and all this other stuff. And generally when that happens, it's a sign of a power outage, because all the networking goes down after the UPSs die and there's no generator on site. So I didn't really think much about it until it kept going. And I looked on the power company site. It said that there was an outage there, but it was in the next town over and not the town we were in. So I called the power company. They went out and took a look and said, nope, there's power. Okay, so I can't see anything. I have no network connectivity at all. I can't even hear the stations because my tuner is at that site that I stream the stations from. So now we're in trouble. Because it's late in the evening, and if the IP link is down, there's no audio going anywhere. So the stations are silent.
Okay, I got to ask you, at this point, you were thinking the whole time, your brain was thinking power.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really consider, or maybe no other failure scenario fit this unique set of circumstances, or this was the obvious one. At what point does it occur to you that, okay, if it's not tell me how that happened in your brain.
Sure.
Because that happens to all of us as engineers. We're laser focused on what we think the problem is. And then, maybe it turns out that that's not the problem. Now we got to open our brain up again.
Sure. Well, it's pretty simple after I realized that it wasn't a power outage. The only other thing the only other way I can see that stuff is if the power's on and the network's working and the IP radios are up. So I've never had those IP radios fail. So, it was still kind of weird to me, but it was pretty much the only thing that it could have been, because there's really nothing else to go wrong. Although I kept thinking it was odd that both sites were down. However, I was thinking, well, if site 1 is down, then that's a hop to site 2. And so again, working backwards, I narrowed it down to, well, okay, I can't get to site 2. And I can't get to site 1, so we know where the problem is. So we're at that point where I'm like, okay, we've got nothing, and it's unusual because and I have other ways to get in, and I couldn't get in. So now I'm really, confused. But as I like to say, the stations weren't getting any more off the air than they were, and to try to drive up, I would have been there at midnight, and it just wasn't going to work. So, talked to the owner. We said, yeah, let's just, it's a weekend, fortunately, and we're just going to get a good sleep and then get up there, and I'll take a look when I get there.
Yeah.
So I drive up, and sure enough, driving into town, the stations are silent, but they're on the air. I guess that's good.
This is what we always have problem with our non-tech employees. Are the stations on the air or off the air?
Right. Yeah. Are they? Do you hear static or no static? Yeah.
Or if they have a radio that kind of mutes anyway between stations, then they're not going to hear static. This is one of the biggest problems for non-tech people is tell us, are you on the air now? We as engineers, we know pretty much instantly what the deal is.
Yeah, which is why in all of our markets, I have tuners, network-enabled tuners, where I can log in and see. Because, the default is always off the air. If it's silent, if it's whatever, it's off the air. So I'm driving into La Crosse last Sunday, and we're definitely silent. So, the obvious things go running through my head. So I get up to the transmitter site, which was very difficult because it had been raining, and it's basically just a ridge road, 2-track ridge road going up the side of a ridge. And so that was all nice and muddy and scary. So I opened the door, and all kinds of weird what's going on. And I look, and that's right. The stations were silent except for the big station, and that was off. So I thought that was really weird. So I walk in the door, the transmitter's faulted, the HD exporter is power cycling over and over in a boot loop.
Oh my.
The network switch, half the network switch was just lit up. No audio on anything. It was just crazy. So I went, okay, obviously this is a lightning strike, because there were storms when all this happened. Obviously we got whacked badly. So now you go through what goes through your mind is what do I do first? How do we even start? So first things first was, the transmitter's off, and it won't matter if I have audio or not if the transmitter's not working. So I turn it on and off. It's not clear the faults. It's just not behaving. So I do the famous Gates Air power cycle. I go over and kill the breaker to it, count to 10, turn it back on. Okay, that's fine. Controller must have gotten confused. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yeah.
So I got that going, and so it's on, but it's silent. Now I've got to figure out networking, what's going on. So, I figured I'd start, work forward on this one. So I started with the dish that goes to the studio, and it's showing is offline. Okay. So I take it out, plug it back into the PoE adapter to restart it.
Okay.
That one comes up. So I've got audio now, and I've got at least to the main transmitter, and I've got the network link.
Oh, so power cycling the IP radio that points back to the point of origination, the studio.
Yeah, that worked.
That worked. Okay.
That got me back on.
Now, I know there's a lot more to the story coming up, but I got to leave it right there. Coming up.
Sure.
So okay. So you power cycled a couple of things. What, the importer exporter, was it?
No, the importer exporter was toast. It was just doing that on its own.
Oh, okay.
The transmitter and the IP radios.
Okay. All right. We're gonna leave you hanging there. Hang on. Okay. We're gonna hear from our friends at Broadcast Bionics and the Bionics studio. You're not at the studio. You're at the Bionic transmitter site, and we'll be right back to see what Chris found when he power cycled the IP radios. One of them came up. What happened to the other one? We'll be right back. It's episode 606 of This Week in Radio Tech.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter and display all platforms in one place and post text, images and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
Bionic Studio from Broadcast Bionics, one of our sponsors here. You can be a hero to your radio station. I mean, obviously to the talent, but also to your management and ownership team at your radio stations. If you bring this kind of technology and this kind of interaction in and make it available to your broadcast, you can really put stuff out on social media, increase your coverage, increase the awareness people have, increase the chatter about your radio station, the prizes people won. You know, what's funny is to tell a winner, now don't say anything about this. What's the first thing they'll do? They'll put it on social media, especially if you give them a clip, or if you put a clip on there for them. Hey, this is Suzanne from Mukwonago, winning $1,000 this morning. Oh, Suzanne's going to share that everywhere, and so are her friends. So check it out from the Bionic Studio from Broadcast Bionics at bionic.radio or bionics.co.uk. I know they got a couple of addresses. We have their address in the show notes. You can check them out there. All right. It's TWiRT 606. Chris Tarr is with us exclusively. We're hearing from the mind of Chris Tarr. And Chris is telling us about his adventures recently. And Chris, go on from there. We had a lightning strike, maybe, and some stuff really screwed up when you got to the number one transmitter site.
Yeah. And you brought this up earlier, kind of how my mind works with troubleshooting all of this stuff, because it really could have been anything. And I when stuff like this happens, it's really easy to let your mind go and just, oh my goodness, and it just takes breaking it down a little bit. I mean, I knew by the time I hit the road that we were looking at a network issue. We knew the power was working, but the fact that I couldn't see anything, I knew a couple things. I knew that we weren't going to have any audio on the stations. And I also knew that we were going to have some sort of network issue. So, I had to kind of plan for that when I left. So, I packed up, and I'll get to some of the things I packed in a little bit, but I packed up the Jeep and I headed on the way. And so where we left the conversation here was I got up and I came in, the transmitter was messed up, the exporter was messed up, and the IP radios were messed up. Power cycled the transmitter, that came back. The backup transmitter, however, is toast. I got to tear that apart. And one of the IP radios came back after power cycling, the one from the studio to the transmitter. I could log in, I could see it. All of a sudden I saw audio coming in on the codecs. And so life was good there. At least the main station, the big station was back on. The translators were not. So now we're having to decide what's going on. So, again, I checked PoE, I checked the connector. We're just not getting anything. I'm not seeing anything. That radio just looks completely dead. And I can't see the other side. So I can't see if the other side sees that side or anything else, because it's gone. So do you have a question?
I take it that this link to Site 2, that is the only IP connectivity that Site 2 has. There's no separate internet, right?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Because we're dealing with, I mean, these are pretty remote areas.
Right.
So before I put the IP radio in, all we had was like 2 megabit DSL at that site.
Right.
Was all we could get.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Now they do have fiber now available at that second site. Wow. So I'm considering getting that put in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
So yeah, so that's where we're at, and that's why we have 2 hops. We have, the main hop, which again, with those radios has been great, and then the second hop. So the second hop is dead. So now the trick is, how do I get audio back on the air? Well, one of the things I packed was my handy Max Connect. So I had that in the Jeep. So I drove over. I reprogrammed. First thing I did was I reprogrammed. I used Bionics boxes to send uncompressed audio over this link to the translators. And I have other things over there that are IP based or whatever that I don't really care about at the moment. I don't really need to see that stuff right now. I just need audio. So I reprogrammed the Bionics boxes to go down to just like 128K MP3 or something like that for streams. Change the IP addresses, change port numbers so I could forward them, and then brought the Max Connect over. And sure enough, when I got to the other side, I could see that that radio was up, but the other one wasn't. It couldn't see the other side. So I put in the Max Connect, plugged in the Bionics boxes that have been, were reprogrammed to receive audio, or the transmit side was set to the new IP address of the Max Connect. Plugged that in immediately. Audio came back up. The 2 translators were on. So now we're at least at the point where I've got audio everywhere. Everybody's on the air and there's audio. Still have quite a mess. I mean, we haven't gone back to look at the stuff that was broken. So at this point, okay, Max Connect's working. We got audio. Chris is happy. Everything's at least stable. Now I've got to go, what's broken? What is wrong?
And as importantly, the accounting department's going to be okay because you can run ads, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
So, we're okay now.
Okay.
We're not fixed, but we're okay.
Okay. All right. We can go have breakfast or lunch or something if we need to, and then get back at it. Right.
I can take a deep breath. And here's the other thing about this part of the country is our main translator site over on the Minnesota side is in Brownsville. The translator site is in a little town called Hoka, and it is literally 1.5 miles from tower to tower. You can see the 2 towers. Mm-hmm. It is a 15-minute drive at least to get from the one to the other. Because you've got to go back down this ridge, down the bluff, all the way the opposite direction through a town, then back around up the other bluff, and then, So, I mean, it's at least a 15, 20-minute drive to go that 1 mile from the one tower to the other.
You need a drone that'll just haul your weight around and
right, exactly.
have your helper, to control it. Hey, drop me off at the other tower side.
Right. Or a pneumatic tube, I thought about. Put myself in the pneumatic tube and shoot myself over.
Oh, gosh. All right.
All right. So I'm like, okay, now I can go back to the main site and really see what the damage is. I need to back up.
Okay.
The other reason why we weren't having any IP connectivity is the network switch failed. I did mention that earlier, but I didn't even get back to that. The network switch was just dead. So fortunately, I keep a spare one up there.
And just curious, this was the network switch at Site 1, right?
At Site 1, right. That had all of the network, all of the dishes connect, all the IP radios connected, all of the devices in that building connected.
Now, you're not sending like live wire AOIP to these sites. This is pretty much normal data, although it may be some uncompressed data in some places.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an AOIP qualified, multicast qualified switch.
Right. There's a lot of there's a lot of just IP data, RDS and that sort of thing. We just had a regular professional Dell Connect, and it was just bricked. So I saved when I put that network switch in, because we first got there, as I mentioned, we only had 2 meg DSL, so there wasn't much on the network there. So when I upgraded and put everything on the network, I took out the old, they had their prosumer netgear or whatever, and I left it on the shelf. And that saved my bacon because I was able to plug in all the critical stuff into that and at least get that stuff back. So, okay, so now, IP's good in that building. We've got audio at the other building. So I drive all the way back around, and now I can kind of start really assessing things. Because, at this point, I'm just triaging. I'm like, okay, I got to get these things back on. I don't even know why things are doing what they're doing. I'm not there yet. I just enough to get right back on the air. So the first thing is this exporter, and it's on a boot loop. It is not going anywhere. So it's pretty obvious the power supply there is bad. Fortunately, again, spares on the shelf. So replaced the power supply, got that back online. And then I noticed the backup transmitter wasn't coming on. That was something that could be saved. Didn't have to deal with that when I was there. And then my backup device for streaming audio to that backup transmitter was boot looping. So that also was bad. So, we're at the point last Sunday where, okay, I think I could pretty much just, I know what I need to do. Everything's stable. Everybody's on the air. We don't have all of the functionality we need to have. RDS isn't working on some of the, on the translators, and I can't see any telemetry or anything, but it's on.
Yeah.
We live to fight another day. So I go back home, and then this past week I get, so now we know. I mean, there's something wrong on the tower with the radio. We don't know what yet, but we know that radio is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that we've got a bad network switch and a couple other things. So get back home, get the tower climber scheduled, get a new Cisco network switch. I wanted a better switch there anyway.
Yeah.
So a better network switch. Most importantly, the one thing I didn't do the last time was I also bought surge suppressors for the Cat 5 because I didn't have those coming into the building.
Yeah.
Off of the IP radios. I think that's where Thor got in was that way, and that's what blew the network switch and some other things. So bought some of those, and came back to the site today. And so today's project was, okay, see if we can get the backup transmitter on, get the new switch in, put in new surge suppressors. So we get all of that done. And I bought new radios, new IP radios. One spare for the shelf, and then one for the one side if we needed it, and one for the other side in case, because I couldn't get the same radio. So one for the other side in case we needed to replace both.
Gotcha.
So tower climber gets up there, radio's dead. There's nothing. So we put the new radio up, plug it in, and these radios have wireless management to get into them the first time.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. I recently put some Ubiquiti radios in, and I had never seen this. It's got another Wi-Fi in there in addition to its main Wi-Fi, and it will let you remote configure it, right?
Yes.
And I don't know why, but I'm real uncomfortable with that. I don't know why. It's just like, no, I need to be wired. I need to plug into my computer.
Well, the trick is you can do that. You don't need wireless to do that. But
yes. Yeah.
In this case, that's how we set it up.
Okay.
And it was working great. We looked at it. We said, oh, geez, it's lit up. We can see it. Move it over to the wired network. Nothing.
Oh.
And exactly, because it's PoE, so it's getting power.
Mm-hmm.
And, so what do we do next? Well, we put new ends on each side. We do that. Radio comes back up. We were able to see it through Wi-Fi. The minute we plug it in, nothing. Can't see it at all. So I also brought a new spool of Cat 5, outdoor Cat 5, and we had to do another run up the tower.
Oh, so you actually had bad cable.
Bad cable, too.
So the cable was zapped somewhere within the cable.
The cable was zapped and the radio was zapped. So after replacing the radio and the cable, it came back up. And of course, because it was a different radio, it didn't talk to the other side.
Does this have to do with like the AC standard that you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had older. The radios I had were older, and so they were on a standard that wasn't compatible to do with the new Air Maxes.
Yeah, this is people need to know this. I haven't been bitten by this, but I was told by somebody before I got bitten that these Ubiquiti radios, you got to make sure they are compatible, because they've changed things along the way, and compatibility is not backwards on their now they've improved the performance all along the way, but to do that they had to forget about talking to older radios.
Right. Sometimes you get lucky, and we were kind of hoping, because that way we didn't have to mess with the other side.
Yeah.
But no luck.
Okay. All right.
So we got the radio up. Radio's running. We can see the one side. Awesome. So now we take that 20-minute drive to go the mile to the other side. And these sites are so close that the IP radio on the Hoka side is literally like on a pole on the side of the building, because you can literally see the entire tower from that side. So we get up there and we replace that radio and plug it in, and everything comes back to life. So, at that point, I can put the radios back on, or the streaming boxes, the codecs back on the IP radio network. I unplugged our trusty Max Connect, and everything lit back up and went back to normal. So at the end of the day, what we're left with is I need to get a replacement power supply for our exporter, and our backup translator still is not working. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that.
Tell you what, we're gonna take another quick break. Although before we do, I want to ask you about something.
Sure.
Back on the IP radios. So I'm installing some IP radios in Cleveland, Mississippi, for about a 5-mile hop to get to a translator site, actually, and we're doing a second path because our ISP sometimes has difficulties at one of their hop points, so it hasn't been entirely reliable. So when you put and I realize you're in a fairly rural area here, you're not in a big urban clutter area, you're using these Ubiquiti, unlicensed IP radios. How much configuration out of the box do you do in terms of, no, I want to set a frequency, or no, I want to just let it find what it can? Do you use encryption on the link itself? What are some of the, do you narrow the bandwidth to give you lots of headroom, so to speak? What are some of the things that are important to you in setting up a must be reliable but doesn't have to be ultimate bandwidth IP radio link? Can you give me some pointers?
That's a great question, and something that I've kind of learned along the way. By default, the Air Max is, I think, 40 megahertz, and it's great. That looks great because you're getting 300-400 megabits of throughput, but also is much more prone to dropouts and interference and those sorts of things. So I always drop mine down to 20. And what that does is it slows the bandwidth down to about a little over 100 meg usually, but it's rock solid. Because there's less chance for anybody stepping on your toes. The other thing I do is really make use of their mapping tool that they have built in, where you can see who's on what frequencies and that sort of thing. And so I will do a fixed frequency, but what I'll do is I'll do that band scan, and I'll find whatever looks the cleanest, and I'll lock it in there. And again, at 40 meg, you're not taking up much bandwidth at all, so you can find a frequency and kind of wedge yourself in there nicely, and then lock it down. Now
what's interesting, and I do what you do, but I kind of do even more of it, because the first links I ever set up were pretty long, and we would actually get, believe it or not, on one link I would get sun fade.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because the sun would come up right behind. About 3 days in the spring and 3 days in the fall, the sun would come up right behind. And with these IP links, they got to work both ways, or they won't work at all. It's not like a 950 STL shot and maybe a 950 STL shot back. No, they are locked together. They got to work together. So I ended up looking up, okay, what's the most robust thing I can possibly do? And so mine typically are narrowed to bandwidth of 10 megahertz.
Sure.
And because I'm not using my remote sites for like backup or a spare automation or a network attached storage out there. It's just carrying the audio and some remote control and RDS. And so then the other thing I do is pick. You got these modulation schemes, right? These MCS numbers, and you can choose auto. It'll pick the fastest one that seems to work. And I'm just more comfortable because again, I'm not doing email and FTP. I'm doing live audio all the time. Yeah. And so, in fact, with a couple of them, I'm doing live wire. So there's very little buffering involved either. I need them to work every packet. And so I usually pick a simple modulation scheme. 16 QAM, QAM tends to be about the most complicated that I'll pick. That's 4x4. And the more modern software shows, the constellation and how well it's falling. On a few of them, I've got QPSK. So it's just 2x2. But if if I only need 17, if I only need 5 megabits of throughput and I've got 17 or 20, well, then that's plenty. Anyway.
Yeah, I find that the 20 meg, and I use the 16 QAM for what I use it because I'm not doing I'm not doing the the live wire type of thing. I use mostly Rincons, which are basically TCP.
Yeah.
And buffered. So I find that is kind of the nice trade-off between reliability and speed, because I do run a lot of stuff. I mean, I've got several channels of audio. I've got four stations worth of audio going up there, plus 2 sites worth of telemetry and all this other stuff. So if I only needed 20 meg, I would lock it down the way you're doing. But I find that most of my sites have been doing the 20 meg, and that's been pretty good. For our purposes. So otherwise, I just kind of do the standard configuration for the dishes. I don't do any kind of funky encryption or anything else, because I also find that the more you complicate that, the more CPU cycles the radios take. And, and I'm not too worried about hackers.
Hey, I did have a problem one time. I had a site that I was running LiveWire to it about 6 miles away. Not a terribly difficult shot, although I was using some really small Ubiquiti dishes. It almost looks like baby's first microwave, just so cute, And one day we started getting interference. And so remotely, I got into the computer and I saw a whole bunch of RF right next to where, I had fixed ours on. There wasn't any RF there when I set it up. And I'm thinking, what in the world is between me and the transmit? What is so close to us? And there is one of those storage facilities, right, where you rent, a garage door in a little space, right? And I'm thinking, I wonder. And so the lady who runs the place is a wonderful friend of the radio station. And so I called her up and I said, hey, sweetie, how you doing? And she said, I said, hey, do you guys have any of those? But by the way, I had somehow identified a Ubiquiti product next door. And so I said, do you guys have any of those wireless video cameras, kind of protecting people's stuff out there? Oh, yeah, we just got a new one out there. It's beautiful. It get nice color picture, And so I said, oh, okay. She said, it's not causing y'all to go off the air, because I heard y'all going on and off the air earlier. I said, well, actually, funny you should ask. It actually is causing a problem. But I can change my stuff, and your stuff is just going to be fine. So let me just change my. Now the problem is hers is probably automatic, and as I'm sure they didn't configure a thing, and so I moved mine to a different channel, different frequency, and it worked out okay. But haven't had any problems since. But it's the danger of unlicensed.
In the next part here, good time to take a break. I'll come back and discuss what I've done differently since living through all of this.
Yeah,
I've made a few changes.
And maybe you won't ever have that particular problem again.
I might, but we'll go over what I've changed to hopefully at least give me a fighting chance.
Chris, our show is brought to you in part by the folks who have the sharpest pencils on the planet. It's Broadcasters General Store. Their website is bgs.cc, and you can get all kinds of broadcast stuff from them at Broadcast General Store. I've been buying from them for literally almost as long, I guess, as they've been open for business. It's been close to 40 years, maybe 35 years. And one of the lines they carry, Chris, is Broadcast Tools. Now, we all know Broadcast Tools. Don Wingett is the proprietor there, the inventor, the designer of so much of this gear. He's got a couple of designers on staff. But one of the products that he has here is an analog distribution amplifier. But the difference is this one has RJ45 connectors on it in the Studio Hub standard. Now, Chris, you and I both use a lot of Axia, audio over IP stuff. And so distribution amplifiers, we don't have so much use for them. But once in a while, you know what? It may be less expensive. If you need an analog signal to go to 4 places at the same time, and they're all next to each other or close to each other, or you don't mind doing the wiring, it may be a better deal for you. Instead of using 4 outputs on nodes or blades or whatever they are,
Sure.
It may be better to use a little distribution amplifier. Let's say you're feeding some silence sensors or some alarm systems or some kind of monitoring system for the jock's bathroom. Who knows? Whatever you got. You can use this beautiful little problem solver from Broadcast Tools. Chris, look at this thing. It's got apparently both RCA, minus 10 dBV inputs on the back. Some people call them IHF inputs. And then it's also got your standard plus 4 signal on there on the input on an RJ45 connector. And then you've got, looks like 8 stereo outputs on this sucker. So, man, you can definitely get some distribution here. Of course, Chris, occasionally you probably still wire up some analog stuff, yeah?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our facilities are hybrid audio over IP and analog. We use a lot of those Air 4 consoles. They're great.
Yeah.
And those also use Studio Hub connectors. So, yeah, these are perfect for that.
Yeah. Hey, no sweat. If you don't have AOIP everywhere, you can certainly use these. But you do get to use, you do get to use the Studio Hub connectors. And that's what you're using too there, Chris, the Studio Hub connectors. Man, they make this work so fast. You don't have
They're so great.
You don't have to strip wires. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Chris, I'll tell you, I accidentally bought a whole bunch of RJ45 connectors that are the pass-through kind, the ones that you stick the wires out the front, but I didn't have a crimp tool for those. So got on Amazon, ordered me a crimp tool, read the reviews, got me one.
You'll never go back.
I know. But now I got to remember to always order the right kind of RJ45s. It shouldn't be a problem. But man, you don't have to strip the wires and screw them down onto little Phoenix connectors, although Broadcast Tools has those as well, if that's what you need. Of course, being from Broadcast Tools, superlative specs on these things. By the way, this will also do a 1x16 monaural or 2x8 in stereo. They have trimmer pots on the front, so if you need some different levels for different pieces of equipment, you got that. It's RF proofed. I mean, RFI proof. So it's great protection on the inputs and outputs. By the way, if you're on the Broadcast Tools website, they have some things that they'd like to know about because they're really friends to the industry. Contract engineers, you need one in your area? Yep, they've got a list. If you're having trouble with lightning damage, they are friends with the folks at Polyphaser and other companies that you can get lightning damage control from. And so check them out at Broadcast Tools. This I can recommend, this analog distribution amplifier. They also have AES EBU distribution amplifiers, all kinds of flavors. Don Wingett, he just doesn't leave any stone unturned. And Chris, I'm sure you've read his manuals. They are, shall we say, concise. And but I'll tell you what, back in the day, 25 years ago, I would call up Don, Kirk Harnack, your manual doesn't tell me how to do thus and so. He says, well, Kirk, actually, turn to page 2, look in the second paragraph, and you'll find it right there. Oh, yeah, you're right. Don, I'm sorry to bother you. You're absolutely right. It's in there. Has that ever happened to you, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Broadcast Tools is available from Broadcaster's General Store, and you can even see a whole big, if I can scroll it here, here's a big list of all the stuff that you'll find at bgs.cc from Broadcast Tools. They have just all the stuff to make your life easier, make radio better, make your stuff, just check it out. At bgs.cc is the website for Broadcaster's General Store. All right, we are talking to Chris Tarr, and normally he's my co-host, just asks the good questions that I forget to ask, but today he's telling us about his own adventure. So Chris, where were you going to go next on this? We were talking about the IP radios and how you set those up. What is next on our travel through this failure?
So really, now we're at the point of, now that it's failed this way, what have we learned and what can we do to kind of help ourselves if it happens again? So that's kind of, part of where I spent today, kind of working on some solutions. Well, the first thing is I still had that DSL circuit sitting in the building. We didn't really use it much because obviously we've got the IP radios, but I thought, boy, it would have been nice to be able to have an out-of-band connection to go in and look and see what's going on because I was completely blind. So one of the things I did is I have a couple of PCs in that building, and I grabbed a USB network adapter, and I put a second network connection on one of our PCs and fed that into a separate router into the DSL connection, which is separate from our other network. So I can actually, if the network is down, I can get into this other machine through the DSL connection and see that network. So I can see, okay, what's up, what's down, really be able to do good first look and go, okay, this hop is working, this hop's not working, and maybe even get in to configure some things. Because I do have a second backup link from our second building that I could get in and reconfigure to actually send audio over. But the problem is when the network was down, I couldn't get in. So I couldn't see any of it. With this, at least I have a second completely separate connection to get in and look. So that was the first thing I set up today. It was just a second way to get in and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the second way to get in, I take it this isn't in parallel with your one router. This is like a whole separate thing into a PC that I guess has two network interfaces.
Right.
Now.
So basically what I did is I took the DSL connection and I brought with me a little MikroTik router and plugged that in and then just ran a connection from that to the second NIC on this PC. So it could see both networks.
And tell me now, I have had no luck doing this yet with my choice of routers because I'm just not smart enough or haven't taken the time to figure it out. But I'd love to have, a dual WAN connection on my routers of choice, and I just haven't been able to get it done. I mean, I've probably put all of 35 minutes into doing it and haven't been successful in 35 minutes. But why wouldn't you do that? Why would you do the simple, sure thing, just run it to one computer? But if that computer's dead, well, then you're still kind of blind.
I actually do have failover WANs in some of my buildings. Unfortunately, the way that this network is set up, that doesn't work in this situation. And because of the DSL only being a megabit, I mean, I couldn't really put much traffic on it anyway. So, yeah, I mean, if this computer's down, I'm kind of out of luck. Fortunately, that's on it's auto start. It's on a UPS. I mean, there's really no reason I can't get into it.
Yeah.
I am working on another solution. There's a possibility I can get fiber at the Hoka site, in which case I would run the network backwards and do a failover that way. So I am working on it. But there's really, unfortunately, with that location, because of how our network works, I can't really do failover at that site without a kind of a major network reconfiguration, which I may do. Because I do have internet coming into that building from two different locations. The problem is that second location, I can't really get that to straddle both networks because I've got another IP radio to our other office there.
Yeah.
Now I can wholesale move it all over physically and get back on, which is what I would have done if that other radio didn't come back to life. but there's not anything I can do kind of remotely to fail that over.
Yeah.
So I mean, I already had some of those things set up. So like if that studio radio was completely dead, I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have had a problem. I could move it over to this other radio, and come up with a different path. But in this situation here, at least I have a different method to get in and see what's going on. Second thing I did was put in the surge suppressors for all of the radios.
What did you pick for these surge suppressors? I know that Ubiquiti sells their own. They're in a plastic case, but they're inexpensive. I don't know. I've used expensive ones. I've used cheap ones. Couldn't tell you if one's better than the other.
I actually went on Amazon and just found some beefy looking ones that had really good reviews.
Okay.
And I don't even remember the name of them, but that's what I ended up using.
By the way, is there any concern about the fact that so many Ubiquiti IP radios use 24 volts instead of PoE 48 volt standard? And then the big ones, the Air Fiber 5s, for example, don't they use something? I don't know. I guess they don't use over 50, but I thought they were capable of 60 volts or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's above my knowledge on that.
Okay.
And then the other thing I did too was I bought a PoE distribution brick. Instead of using the Ubiquiti kind of generic bricks, I actually bought a heavy duty PoE injector that you can run multiple runs on. Because that's the other thing I found too, is depending on the length of the run, those Ubiquiti supplies don't really work well.
I had no idea such a thing was available. Oh, you got to send me a link. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's Texas PoE is the company that makes it.
Okay.
And they have like 4, 6, 8, 10, and it's basically just this almost like a patch panel looking guy.
Oh.
And yeah, I it was great. I bought one of those, keeps everything nice and orderly.
Nice idea.
So
okay.
Yeah. So I did that just because one of the other issues was trying to find, in the heat of the battle, what cables went where and, all that kind of thing. So, so that was that. And of course, always having the Max Connect in the truck. I just bought a little road case for it so I can keep it with me in case, that comes up again. So, as I like to say, when I called my coworker today to tell him, get him the update, it's like, I'm leaving it better than I found it. And again, I mean, these things happen and there's really nothing, Thor will always find a way in with his hammer. And, you're always going to have these issues. The thing is, you got to learn from them. You need to look at those failure modes and know that it's going to happen again. The problem is, or at least the reality is, can you find other ways to work around it now that you know how, if there's going to be a failure, this is one of the ways it's going to happen. And so I'm pretty confident that, first of all, that we've mitigated that so that it's going to be not as likely to happen again. But if it does, I'll be in a little better position than I was last time.
So it's fairly apparent to you that I guess surge came in on the Cat 5s that went to the IP radios and hurt some of your network gear.
Yes.
What do you think the path was for the surge that hurt your importer exporter and anything else that got hurt?
I don't know that I think that was just a typical. I think that it was probably a weak power supply and the power went out.
Okay.
I mean, the building did take a good whack, so it could have come in over the power line. That's possible, but that all goes through a pretty high end UPS, so it shouldn't have. Their surge suppression of that shouldn't have been an issue.
What kind of grounding do you have for the building itself, or I should say for the tower?
The copper strap into grounds.
Yeah.
And I just beefed that up recently. I mean, my understanding, I talked to actually the landowner today, and he said, yeah, it was a heck of a storm up there. So. And,
Ubiquiti, or most people would say, hey, you need a surge suppressor up at the IP radio too, within a few feet of that, as well as one down in the building. What's your feeling on that?
The thing is those take their life, to protect others. Mm-hmm. And if you have it on the tower, you're going to have to be climbing up there to replace them. So
yeah, it's one more thing to go wrong.
Right.
And did it protect or not the radio? And a lot of these radios that you and I are using on shorter runs are really cheap anyway. The cost of the tower crew way exceeds the cost of the radio.
And that's that's the thing is I'm honestly not protecting the radio. I really don't care. Those are disposable. What I'm trying to protect are everything inside of the building, which is not so cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, these Ubiquiti radios, the ones that I'm using, the 5ACs are, they're like $130 a piece or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing is I keep them on the shelf. I keep spares of all that stuff on the shelf. And that's the other thing that I was glad I did. It was a lesson I learned a while back, but something I wanted to pass along is I had a spare switch. I had spare radios. I had, Max Connects, all that stuff. Had I not had that stuff, we would have been off the air a whole lot longer. This could have been a huge nightmare.
This is what needs to go in the modern engineer's toolbox is things like this. Fewer oscilloscopes and more replacements for stuff that honestly is fairly inexpensive. A lot of it's not all of it's inexpensive, but a lot of it is. By the way, just a word of caution. For Cleveland, Mississippi, I put up a new IP radio link. We bought a couple of Ubiquiti radios from a seller on Amazon, and nobody opened the box for about 2 months. And we got there, opened the box, and they had been repackaged. They were not in the Ubiquiti packaging. Missing. I had bought the dishes that have the extra out front to narrow the beam width for less interference, and those come with a flat radome cover with little edges around the sides to slip down over. I've used them in several places, love them, and the package was minus those. So, well, the radios came up and I configured them on the ground. But after I got one of the radios up, it quit working and it just will not come back to life. And so, we're way past the 30-day guarantee on them. So we just bought another pair of radios, and I have to go install them.
Yeah, I usually buy directly from Ubiquiti, and we've actually, for their smaller radios that I use, you can buy like 5 packs of them. Yeah, for $400 or something. And I keep spares of those. And believe it or not, those little radios have quite range on them. I've got one that's like doing a 17-mile hop or something, and still passing 100 megabits per second. So
wow.
I've
got a couple. I need to talk to you. So I've got a couple. I'd like to do a lengthy hop, about 21, 22 miles coming up, and I don't have to run live wire over it. But clearance may be a problem. I've only got a 100-foot tower at the studio, although I've got a 650-foot tower where it's going. So, hey, I tell you, we got to take our last break. Chris will be back. I'm sure he'll have a tip of the week. He always has something extra to add to make our day better. Our show is hey, Chris, I'm gonna have you talk about our friends over at Angry Audio. You want to take it away and talk about Angry Audio?
I sure do, because I'm really excited. I was talking to Catfish yesterday, the proprietor of Angry Audio. And, one of the things that we've run into with HD radio nowadays is you can't listen live on the air anymore. And, the announcers, the jocks, they really love to hear themselves on the radio with all that big processing on it, and they hear deep voices and everything else. Well, the problem is now you can't do that, because you've got to be able to monitor in real time, which means that you're usually listening to program out of your board. And that is unprocessed audio. And, they get used to it. They don't like it. And for years, we've come up with other ways to do it. We've taken old Optimods and taken all these, old spare processors and Behringers, and it's just not the same. It just does not sound the same. So the guys at Angry Audio, Corny Gold, who's I'm a big fan of his, they've come up with something based on their C4 streaming processor called the C3, and it's a headphone processor. And what it is, it uses their technology that does they have what's called AI technology, artificial intelligence, that processes the audio in real time without many controls. I mean, these are very simple to set up. In fact, in a week or two, I'll probably show you the C4 live and in person. But the C3 has the same engine as the C4, but for headphones. So you can give your announcers processed audio in their headphones in real time, just like it would sound on the air, that same kind of really good, rich processing. And as you can see, they do AES, EBU, or analog. And again, because of the Studio Hub, you can daisy chain them. So if you have a studio with a couple of announcer positions and you want them all to have processed audio, you can use their headphone gadgets and daisy chain them and use the one box there to output to all of those different headphone jacks. So everybody in the studio gets processed audio in their headphones, which, again, I will tell you from being out in the trenches, is a huge thing because everybody likes to hear their voice through the audio processing. And when you take that away for HD or, as we're talking about with IP radios for doing STLs, there adds delay there. You generally can't do that anymore. And everybody's looking for a really easy solution to give that processed audio to the headphones. And there we go, the C3 with Corny's processing in there. And it's based on the streaming device, which has gotten great reviews as well. So Angry Audio, check them out. You can also get them through distributors like BGS and others, and give your talent the audio that they want in their ears with the Angry Audio C3.
Chris, I'm going to back you up and talk about Max Connect. You said you were using Max Connect to keep your stations on the air at the Yeah, there yours has more antennas than mine does. You've got
to a lot of men.
Yeah, I know. We're going to hear from our friend John Tokok to tell us why they are using Max Connect wireless.
With all of the recent cybersecurity attacks against large corporations, we were looking for a product that would give us the ultimate security at our transmitter sites and as well as with our broadcast equipment. Max Connect fits the bill very well. Its greatest security feature is the fact that it gives you a single static IP address. Using this single static IP address allows us to close hundreds of open ports on our firewalls across the company and restrict access to only the Max Connect IPs. This has greatly reduced our exposure to the World Wide Web and made us much more secure moving forward. It has also given us the ability to expand as needed in a secure fashion.
That's John Tokok talking from Max Connect Wireless. So this is part of your toolkit now. You got to carry this around. Get your internet where you need it, by golly. And sometimes we might use our cell phone for providing some hotspot activity. And your cell phone may give you a terrific speed, but I tell you, not always all the packets get through. And with Max Connect, the whole idea is that every packet get through. Now, it's not guaranteed, but you do have a huge level of reliability. Because you are a high priority person here, higher than all the other schmucks. Yeah, it
worked as my STL link from between those two towers for over a week.
There you for over a week. Yeah. Wow, good for you.
I'll let you in on a secret. I have one in service, and it's been an STL for over a year for the station, and it's been flawless.
Wow. Amazing. All right, Max Connect Wireless. We will put their link in the show notes, and you can check them out. Give them a call or look at their website, and they'll get you hooked up. All right, Chris, let's wrap up the show here. You've been telling us a great story about something that we've all come across in different forms or fashions. A transmitter site that's down, odd symptoms, and getting separating the wheat from the chaff, figuring out what's really wrong, what's really not wrong, what needs to be fixed first, and where can we be most effective to get back on the air. How about a tip of the week for us, Chris?
Well, this one's pretty simple, and we kind of touched on it a little bit a little while ago, which is have spares on the shelf. Obviously you can't stock all, really expensive items, but just the simple things like if you have IP radios, have an extra radio, have an extra network switch, have extra power supplies, have, anything that's, critical that you can have a backup for, have one. And then when you use the one that's on the shelf, replace it. That's the one thing we always forget. And in fact, when I ordered the IP radios, I ordered double because we're going to take one off the shelf and we're going to replace one. So, I want to make sure we had one sitting there for the next time. So again, go through your sites and take a look at things that are consumable or that, are easy to replace or inexpensive and keep them, because you don't want to be there at 12:30 in the morning. And in this kid's situation, at a remote site in the middle of nowhere on a steep hill and realize that something really crazy like a network switch is holding you back. I can't tell you how happy I was that when I saw that network switch fail, that there was one sitting on the shelf, because it's you're at least a half an hour from the closest town, and at 2 a.m, there's no IT shops open. So the fact that I had that network switch there saved our bacon.
Especially with, you mentioned commodity items. And a lot of times, depending on the length of your path and whether it's licensed or not or whatever, it may be perfectly reasonable. I mean, think about how inexpensive a typical Ubiquiti IP radio is. Just buy a second one, or one for each. Just have them on the shelf. It saved my bacon numerous times. I don't mean to make it sound that bad. Twice. I've been able to just go grab one off the shelf, and there it is. Same thing for network switches. Yes, I've used a chintzy network switch in place of where a good one should be for a while a good one got ordered. But yes, indeed. All right, Chris, another good show on This Week in Radio Tech. I appreciate your insights as to just how to troubleshoot stuff and your adventures. I'd say your experiences are very similar to a lot of engineers, wouldn't you?
I would say, absolutely. I just, the difference I think is I'm not embarrassed about mine usually. I mean, there are people who, I don't mean that in a bad way, but there are people who, because it shows that, let me tell you everything that I've done that's failed now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid to talk about it. I love it because I think you learn a lot of great lessons, and it happens to everybody. So I'm not really embarrassed by it. I look at it as a war story and a learning experience. So.
Good deal. All right. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you being a co-host, and I appreciate you being today's guest on This Week in Radio Tech. We got some good guests coming up over the next few weeks. Can't tell you who they are. They're not all confirmed. One of them is Mark Persons. Mark is going to be back on.
They're good guests as opposed to the one you had today. No, don't worry. We're going to have some good guests coming up.
Yeah, we're going to have some good guests coming up. That's right.
Don't worry.
Let's see. How do I make me full screen and get Chris off of here? All right. Hey, folks, thanks a lot to our sponsors. Be sure you patronize them. They're really worthwhile. Broadcast Bionics, Broadcasters General Store, Max Connect Wireless, Angry Audio, Nautel, and Radio Guide at radio-guide.com. These are all really good folks. They are working every day to make our lives as engineers and broadcasters really better. Thanks a lot. We appreciate Suncast doing some great production on this show, and we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.